Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you are in the United States. My name is Daryl Wilson, and I will be moderating today's panel brought to you on behalf of the American Bar Association Young Lawyers Division, Diversity and Inclusion Team. Today's panel, the topic will be the how and why of DE&I, implementing an inclusion plan in corporations. As you may be aware, this is a part of a four-part series. Our first panel that we had about a couple of months ago was the implementing the inclusion plans in law firms. Today is corporations. On April 20th, we will discuss the implementing inclusion plans in our law schools. And then on June the 6th, or June the 1st, I'm sorry about those dates, I can confirm for you, will be the implementing inclusion plans in bar associations. Today, we have a great set of panelists here today that will help us in this conversation as we guide through and talking about the implementation of inclusion plans in corporations. Our first panelist is Christina Alabi. She is the Senior Managing Counsel of Global Employment Law at Peloton. Next, we have Angela Martin, who is the Head of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion at Equitable. We then have Joy Monahan, who is the Associate Director of Legal Diversity and Outside Counsel Programs at AbbVie. And lastly, we have Sainabu Sanko, who is a Senior Counsel and DE&I Counsel Chair at Tyson Foods. And then I guess myself, I'm also Corporate Counsel at Tyson Foods and also serving as the Director of the Diversity and Inclusion Team for the ABA-YLD. So as we go into our panel, I want to let you know that please feel free to use the Q&A portion at the bottom of your screen. You can use that to ask us questions. We will have time for a Q&A at the end of this program. We set aside about 10 minutes for Q&A. So we definitely want you to utilize the Q&A function. If you do not, I will be able to fill in the time with some questions that I may have based off of some of the conversation that's had during today's panel. But we definitely hope that you do utilize the Q&A function because this is a very important topic in this profession, and we definitely want to answer any questions that you may have. So as we jump into today's panel, I want to ask pretty much each of our panelists to really give us kind of a brief background as to how you got into the DE&I space and how you potentially got into the DE&I space for your corporation. So we want to start with Christina first.
Awesome. Thanks, Daryl. So before I was at Peloton, I was at JP Morgan Chase, and there I was the co-chair of one of our sub-councils of our Legal Diversity Council. And so I think that I didn't get into the space. I think I was born into the space. And so if you just grow up experiencing things, you have no choice but to be an advocate, whether passive or active. And I'm choosing the active route. And I really want to give thanks to one of the co-chairs at JP Morgan Chase for kind of tapping me on the shoulder and asking if I wanted to be involved. Her name is Nicole Wright. And so I would say that that's how I got actively involved in in-house counsel DEI work and really trying to move the needle there.
Thank you so much, Christina. We will go to Joy.
Did you say me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. So I'm Joy Monahan, and yes, I've been at AbbVie almost 2 years. So what is a little different about my role, it's a newly created role. At AbbVie, it's a big pharmaceutical. We have a global, enterprise-wide DE&I officer. But my role, when I was hired, is specific for legals, for AbbVie legals department, right? So by function. And so one of the things I navigate, and I'll talk about a little bit more, is programming, or in things that we do, in specific to law firms, what we do with those lawyers trying to make change with the legal profession. But before that, I graduated from law school in '97. So I practiced for quite a while, and I've worked at small firms, I've worked at big firms and medium-sized firms, and I was also general counsel to the economic development arm for the city of Chicago. So I've had many different hats, I've been in many different spaces. And as Christina said, you're kind of just born into this role, right? Because, if you're a diverse person of color, this becomes important to you, right? And I was mentioning to the panel earlier, right before we started, that when I was in law school, I went to LSU Law. I was the only Asian in my law school. So not even class, my law school. And so when I took the bar, you know, I was one of the very few Asians that was practicing in Louisiana, and like I can list them on my hand, which is a little bizarre, but these days. But back then, you know, very rare. So I'm like a pioneer. So, but anyway, so when the opportunity came up to do this, I couldn't pass it up. So.
Thank you so much, Joy. Sainabu?
Thanks, Daryl. I think I'll have to piggyback off of what Christina and Joy said. I think for me, the distinction is when did I go from being a passive advocate to an active advocate? And I think college for me was that shift when I started to try and find a constructive forum to address some of the issues I had faced. There was an incident that occurred in college and I didn't feel that the institution was addressing it as it should. And I started a community-wide program, a social justice program, and kind of went from there. In my private practice, I was part of our firm recruitment committee as well as the diversity committee. And now here at Tyson, I've had the opportunity to be part of our department DE&I council and be chair of that council. So it's really just pivoting to the active part of, you know, promoting DEI work.
That's great to hear. I appreciate it. And Angela?
Thanks, everyone. Really excited to be here today. So for me, definitely the same thing from an active to passive. I joined Equitable 12 years ago in the compliance and regulatory space. And it took me 2 years to fully come out to my peers and my colleagues. And it was a lot to do with the ERG at the time, the Pride ERG. And I think when you go through something like that, it creates immense empathy towards other underserved and underrepresented communities. And I just wanted to get into this space and really make this a better place for everyone. And that's when I took the opportunity to be the head of diversity, equity, inclusion at Equitable 4 years ago. So I spent a majority of my career in compliance, but really trying to make an impact in this space now.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate all of you all's kind of background as to how you got into DE&I. And it's definitely an important space. And there's a lot of work to be done to kind of increase diversity, equity, inclusion in the profession. So with that being said, I want to kind of turn to our first question is really to, can you discuss where each of your organizations are in terms of implementing DE&I plans, whether that be through, you know, your affinity, social affinity groups, or what are you doing in the training space for your team members? Are there sponsorship, mentorship, or anything of that like? So if you could, I'll just kind of go with the order on the screen. So Christina, back to you first.
So I can probably speak more to JP Morgan Chase since I've been there. They're a little bit more developed. There's an initiative called Leading with Diversity. And so we say that on all new matters, when you're engaging outside counsel, for example, or other suppliers, we want the lead partner to be diverse. And we've even moved that to racially and ethnically diverse. When you're at a startup though, there's a lot of work to be done. So it's very new, and they recently created a steering committee, which I joined as well, to try to implement some of the ideas that we had at JP Morgan Chase, which were successful, and just continuing to like push forward and make sure that we are not just standing against systemic racism, but we're anti-racist, and we are, you know, putting our money where our mouth is with respect to DE&I.
Thank you. And Sainabu?
Sure. So for me, I need to split up my answer between the corporate initiative and what our legal team is part of the Global Governance and Corporate Affairs Department. From an enterprise-wide level, Tyson has a variety of BRGs addressing different groups. We have mentorship circles. We hired our first chief diversity officer. So the company as a whole is taking initiative, but I think everyone understands it's a big company, right? So our GC for our in-house legal department has also implemented initiatives and has tasked a variety of folks within her team to push forward those initiatives, which are ultimately consistent with Tyson's overall diversity initiatives, but also just having folks on the ground level, for lack of a better term, to also work on it. With respect to our in-house law department, we have the DE&I Council, which was implemented about 7-8 months ago, and Daryl is also part of that council with me. We have direct interface with our general counsel. The DEI council meets with our general counsel on a monthly basis. We present to her issues we see in the DEI space, and we get her support all along the way, as with VP. And I really think, those are the initiatives we're really trying to push forward to foster inclusion and diversity efforts here at Tyson.
Thank you, Sainabu. Joy?
So, like I was saying, so because my role is very specific to legal, any type of affinity groups, training programs, sponsorships and mentorships, those are handled at the enterprise level, right? What led to me actually in this new created role is about 4 years ago, our general counsel, who was first general counsel at Abbott and now at Hbcu, she was very instrumental in making sure that women had, a lot of opportunities. So in fact, even our department is more than 50% women, right? Which is just wonderful. And, definitely she's always, made a push on to have more diverse attorneys. And so one of the programs that they led, she realized, the ABA had come out with the, okay, let's sign up and have that commitment to, increase the diversity in the firm. So, she decided to, she joined on with like many of the other general counsels and said, but I really want to do something about this. I really don't want to just talk about it. And so what she did was, she went to our top spend law firms and asked them like, we really want to do something. Will you be willing to work with us? And they all said yes. And so again, very independently, met with each firm, created goals that, that could be achievable, and give them, a 5-year period to try to meet them, right? And the target goal was over 5 years. We wanted the firms who worked on our matters to have staff of, to make sure that our matters were measured by 50% women partners and at least 15% diverse partner hours, right? And so it's not the people. So it's not, like, 3 people to 2 people or, 2 women and 5 lawyers. No, it's however many hours they actually bill on our matters, which is, again, and it's partner hours. It was very intentional because, you can always give substance, hours are, easy when you're an associate. There's always, it's the substantive hours that are harder to get. So what's remarkable is the fact that, and I think we're going to talk about this later with our partners, is, it was finally like people were willing to have something that motivate them, right? And the one of the things we do is we check in on them. So this is the 3rd year now, but we've already met our targets, the 50%, over 15% diverse attorney partners. But I mean, there's more to do, but that what is so interesting, what I love the most is the fact that when we meet with them and, and they thank us, they're like, thank you for having these programs, because finally we could promote, the forever associates, right? The forever counsels, because again, to meet our targets, that had to be partner hours. So all of a sudden there was just an increase in women and diverse partners who worked on our matters. So, I mean, when you start doing things like that, right? I mean, they were always doing the work to begin with, but they just were never, no one ever gave them the credit. And just again, having programs like this, and it really makes a difference. And that's why I'm just so proud to be part of it. And so when I joined, again, it was, remember, this was already in place when I joined. And my role now, again, is to, well, what else can we do, right? We can ask our law firms to be more diverse, but what about us? And so, one of the programs that I have is, again, we're focusing on our own recruitment. How do we develop, we recruit them, get them people here. How do we retain them, right? And what about our pipeline? Because we want to make sure there's a path, and give people opportunities everywhere, to get to us here. And so another one of our program is working with Hbcu Law Schools. We have a direct partnership with 3 of the 6. Another different program is, we're starting to work more with NAMWOL firms, right? Making sure that whether they work with our firms or, you know, they have their own matters, right? So, sorry about that. But again, you asked me about how do we make sure this is so inclusive? So this is my favorite part about the program. Again, we don't have just a committee. I have all these different work stream or projects is what I call them, right? I have an HBCU project, I have an AMWIF project, I have the pipeline project. We have a call out for all of our attorneys to volunteer. So I have these dedicated project team. Last year we had over 25%. This year it doubled. So I have 50% of our legal department, you know, 266 people, not just attorneys, paralegals, right? Admins, anybody who wants to be a part of this program. And we take your ideas. It's okay if you're not an attorney, you know, tell us what you see. And I think having everyone be a part of these meetings and just, again, their input, and we listen because it was a different point of view. I think that's what makes our program so special. And like I said, my eyes light up because I get so excited talking about it.
No, I definitely get it. And I feel like, you know, here on this panel, you mentioned the kind of ABA, what they're doing for the seating tour. That I actually served on the Commission for Racial, Ethnic, and Diversity in Professions. So I feel like there's a commercial break here quickly to kind of promote the Model Diversity Survey, because that's definitely the survey she's talking about. As the Model Diversity Survey is where we utilize to ask the GCs to join in the Resolution 113 efforts to help diversify the profession. So Angela, we'll flip it to you and let us know what Equitable is doing in this space.
Yeah, sure. So just a few things I'll mention, you know, like the others have mentioned, we have a DE&I committee within our legal department. I think what really differentiates and enables them to have the most impact is that we have complete commitment and tone from the top, that there is no doubting where GC stands, where his leadership team stands on this matter, that it's important, it's just as high as priority as any other business initiative that we have in this company. So I think that tone from the top really then enables and empowers the autonomy of the committee to come up with ideas. And I actually just had a call with them an hour ago, and I'm blown away with how thorough their plan is. It's, you know, 7-8 pages of plans on exactly what the legal team is going to do to promote diversity, equity, inclusion, and it's a multi-year plan. So I think that tone from the top and then the grassroots approach from the committee is really a recipe for success. And then the other thing I'll mention, and I know it was touched on with outside counsel, but we have a similar program where in-house counsel is required to interview diverse leading counsel. But what we require is that the leading counsel receive economic credit or reputational credit. And I think that's what's really going to move the needle. And we're really putting our money essentially where our mouth is, right? So we're really promoting this whole ecosystem, not only within our own systems, but externally. So those are a few things. I know we're going to have a lot of time to dig into some of these too.
No, I do appreciate that. And what I want to do is kind of, Angela, this will also go back to you. So
Yeah.
sorry about the lack of break for you, but I want to talk about kind of like infinity bias or implicit biases that may arise. And we know that that's one of the biggest issues now that make attorneys feel less welcome in spaces or at their organization. My question for you is, how have you been able to achieve DE&I success if you are unable to rid people of these implicit biases, or what steps are you taking to rid people of these implicit biases? So I'll give this question to Angela and then follow up also with Zainabu on it.
Yeah, I think, Darryl, the key that you just mentioned is that we're never going to eliminate it completely. I think first, accepting the fact that we won't eliminate it is one step towards progressing in the space. I think other pieces that we've thought about from a corporate perspective is training. Now, we've all been remote for a really long time now, almost 2-3 years, and online training could be really boring. So what we came up with last year was what we call racial equity microbursts. And each month, a 5-6 minute video is pushed out and required for all of our employees to take. And it's just a thought-provoking conversation and question. And what we created with that as well were supplemental talking guides. So the thought was, okay, you don't have to sit in front of your computer for an hour to learn something. You could hear something and then take it offline with your manager, your peers, have a courageous conversation on it. And we saw a really great, response from the organization on that. We had 97% of our organization take those courses. So that's one thing that we're doing. I think the other thing that we're really trying to embody is diverse interview panels to challenge implicit bias during the interview process. And the key to that is you could ask someone diverse to sit on your panel, but unless you ask them their opinion and have a real feedback session, they're just a token on the panel then. So I think we're really trying to encourage that tough dialogue where, the hiring manager might not see eye to eye with the people they asked to put on the panel, but that's where like really the success comes in. So we're trying to really encourage that candid, dialogue and really try to challenge each other on the spot.
And Daryl, to add on that, I mean, I would echo essentially everything Angela said about, how you need to address it. Biases will always be there, regardless of the space you are talking about. What you can do is address those biases head on. And for us, it has always been from the top down, right? So like at our monthly team talk, if our GC sees something that we need to discuss, it is discussed on that platform. And that encourages, it does a lot of things. One, it shows the support we have from the top down to make sure that we are addressing issues that affect all our team members, but it also helps push conversation. And along with some of the initiatives Angela's team is doing, we're working on DE&I workshop, things like that, just to kind of bring the education and the knowledge to folks so that, it continues to encourage the conversation, continue to push people to think of solutions, right? What are the issues? We can plan all we want, but unless we put those plans into action, we're not going to get there. And so that's part of our goal, to make sure we push the conversation, but also push the action that are required from those conversations.
No, I appreciate that, Sandy, and definitely you, Angela, as well. It seems like there's kind of this theme of, biases and the such, but there's another kind of, I would say, theme or issue in the DE&I space that may be plaguing some of like the law firms, and that's the sense of tokenism. We've all kind of in this space have been included in a pitch where we may have not been the necessary perfect fit, but because of our diverse background, we were included in a pitch and we may have never even, saw work from it, or if we saw work, it wasn't necessarily meaningful. So I want to turn to Joy and Angela on this particular question and to kind of highlight what is your organization doing to kind of help combat tokenism in law firms when it looks to assigning that work to outside counsel?
Well, that was what I was talking about, the program, that I started, because it just doesn't allow for it, right? I mean, it's, you want qualified people, but you also want to make sure you create opportunities for people so that it's not a tokenism, right? And so we're trying to find, different ways where we can go and meet, young diverse associates, see if there are opportunities where we can mentor them, whether we can, make sure that they're included on our matters, identify them. We have, with some of our law firms have set up a series of roundtable sessions where, again, we do meet with some of the different attorneys in the affinity groups, and just one, identify who is at the firm, right? Because before, it's not like we want to go through like a web page or say who are all your diverse associates, but one, we expect to be introduced to them who want to do our work, right? And then to the extent that they do our work, we want to make sure we continue to give them work. And so, and I think with doing that, the more you do, the more you have client touches, the more the associates know that, you don't have to go to the relationship partner. You can come directly to us. I think that makes a difference. And again, one of our programs is to make sure every one of our attorneys who, and we don't, all of our attorneys can hire any firm they want or any, and so, we want to make sure they're empowered to also say, hey, if I want a diverse team, I'm going to ask for one, and would hope to get one, right? And so it's not even up to our leadership to ask. It is, it's all levels. So I think by showing the associates that too, that, you can talk to people on our level. You don't have to go through our, and I'm talking about like vice president, down to the, the junior counsel, when they can have those connections with associates, I think the associates feel more comfortable that, oh yeah, maybe I don't have to run through, the relationship partner all the time. And again, by building upon that, and as you all know, the more work you do, the better you get at it, the more opportunities you have. and you really get to learn it. So I think that's one way to combat it.
Yeah, I think building on that, two ways that we're thinking about this is providing real exposure and real opportunities to diverse colleagues. And we do that through our corporate talent programs where, everyone gets stuck in their silos. It's really easy to get stuck in your silos, get stuck in your work, but having that more, expansive networking opportunity and really opportunity to work on something different than your day-to-day. So that's something that our talent programs are adding in from a corporate aspect. And then legal specific, there's a program that they introduced where managers are really encouraged to talk to their diverse employees and encourage them to think about other practice areas that they're interested in, and then have some niche assignments in those areas and connect them. So it's expanding their network, expanding their practice experience, and then working on real stretch assignments during their time here. So I think that's another way to just really encourage real change and opportunity with our diverse employees.
No, I appreciate that. And one thing that, as we talked about our DE&I efforts in each of our organizations, I think it's very important that you have leadership buy-in when it comes to DE&I and those kind of projects that you want to take on. So this question is really for everybody, just kind of running all and putting every organization that's involved in this panel on the spot. How is your leadership involved? Are they supportive of your DE&I efforts? And if you can, kind of provide an example of how the leadership has supported your DE&I efforts. I'll go to Christina first.
Okay, so I will go back to JP Morgan Chase. They supported it by also allowing me to go into different speaking engagements, train new attorneys. So I was a vice president and I was added to the new hire onboarding, pardon me, for attorneys to tell them this is what's important to us. I think our GCs there's different levels of GCs at Chase. They were very supportive of it. I think that's why it was so effective, was because our clients, or rather the law firms, they heard it from the GCs. They didn't hear it from the mid-level or the junior attorneys in-house. They heard it from the GCs to say this is important to us. So I saw a lot of support. They would, we'd give an idea and they would support us. We'd be able to say, we want to meet with this firm. We want to have this program. They just gave us a lot of autonomy to really push these programs ahead. I've also seen some organizations, including where I'm at now, where they've offered equity or some type of compensation to DEI leaders. And so I think that also helps.
Thank you so much. And Sainabu, I'll put you on the spot to tell us how both Donnie and Amy feel about DE&I efforts.
Well, I think you knew where I was going with this, because I was going to mention Donnie. And for those that don't know, Donnie is our CEO. And I mentioned earlier, I had to, when I talk about it, I have to split both the company-wide initiative and our department initiatives, right? And from a company level, the company has been doing all it can. And I think it's been hearing what people say they need, and it's been implementing plans to make sure that those needs are met. And again, like I said, we hired a chief diversity officer last year. They're working on a lot of initiatives. And now when you bring it down to our department level, the attorneys and the other broader members of our team, Amy, this whole DEI council was because of Amy, our general counsel, and the initiative she implemented. And she has a broader 6 pathways to impact, is what we call it. And these are these pillars that really, when you follow these pillars, they will bring us to our end goal in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And with respect to support, we have direct access to our general counsel at any time that we need it. I mentioned earlier, we have a monthly meeting with her, but let's say something happened tomorrow. We can get on her calendar and say, Amy, we need to sit down and have a discussion, because this is what we're seeing and this is what we need to implement. And while we have autonomy to do a lot of this, it's always good to have that support from the top down, right? And she has briefed our executive team on this multiple times about the work we're doing both at our department level on it. So I think that support really, it's instrumental. I think we've all said it, right? It's instrumental because it's good to have the support of folks and the power of the folks at the top level to help us push the plans we need to get forward to get everyone on the same page.
No, thank you, St. Boone. I know at the onset I mentioned that I would stay in my moderator's role, but I have to hop out of it. And I don't think St. Boone would have allowed me to stay in my moderator role the whole time. And that's one thing that, on top of what St. Boone mentioned, we also, one of our kind of 3 wins that our CEO, Donnie, has kind of implemented is winning with our team members. And that kind of really gets into the DE&I space. And even with our grassroots kind of operations that we've done within our legal team, which is the Global Governance and Corporate Affairs. I'm glad I was able to get that out without getting tongue twisted. But in order to, one of the things that we've really talked about is team members, our team members, and how we can help promote them and help, kind of get them into areas of leadership if that's something that they want to do, and even offer a lot of our workforce are kind of diverse individuals. And so looking at English as a second language, because we do have a lot of languages that are spoken on our kind of facilities floors or our plant floors. And so looking at that and kind of creating opportunities for our team members has been very, very, very significant. And it's always good to see, a CEO or a GC that's very kind of tied into that area and making sure that everybody is supported and that everybody grows within the organization. So I think that's kind of another level to the good work that we're doing at Tyson. So now I'll kind of jump back into my moderator hat. Go ahead.
If I could just thank you for that. And you reminded me of another key point, because, we talk about compensations and equities being tied to these goals. One of the other things that the DEI Council has been, fortunate to do is that every year Tyson team members have goals that they need to work towards meeting, right, at the end of the year. And DEI Council has been able to help formulate some of those DEI goals. So that's an enterprise-wide, we want to meet these goals. And you can do so by attending workshops, by doing certain things in the DEI space that helps keep us all informed and learn how to work with each other. So thank you for adding on to that, Daryl.
No, you're quite welcome. And Joy, will jump down to you.
Sure. And like I said, top down, right? We're all in it together. Again, our strategic plan was formed by the leadership, right? So it was the leadership decided, okay, we want to focus on these, strategy sessions. We want to work on these areas of recruitment. They call them pillars at AbbVie: recruitment, development, training, pipeline, partnerships, right? And then as I talk about my project teams, each of the project team has a vice president, now 2 as sponsors. So they're in all the meeting, they help set directions. They're really a part of like all of these programs that we do. So, I mean, there's no, if that's not getting involved and being supportive, I don't know what it is, right? And then with that, everybody, the team, their teams, are encouraged to join. And again, because we had such a great year last year, and all the different programs we have with, working with the expansion of our interns, again, the recruiting from the different schools, being mentors to students from from our HBCU schools. It's really just, again, create a lot of excitement, and it's just, it's not even something like, it's something like you want to do, right? And I feel like that way, I mean, that's how we're able to, again, progress together, right? I mean, we don't know everything. We don't pretend that we know everything. Sometimes if something doesn't work, we try to figure out, well, how come it's not working, or what are we doing wrong? Or maybe, what else should we do? And it's with the input of the different people that, that we're able to, again, just progress. And I think one of the reasons, so Daryl and I know each other because we have a mutual friend, one of the women who is one of my project teams. She's the one who kind of connected us. And I think she reached, and we love having her on our team because she's on the recruiting pipeline, and she was, again, one of the people that we recruited, and she's giving back and showing us, well, here are things that worked, here are things that didn't work, right? And so it's incredibly valuable.
No, I appreciate that, Joy. Angela?
Yeah, on the leadership side, I think Sanabu touched on this, but access and availability really matter. And I think, we had a new GC join us recently, and I don't know if it was formally part of his 100-day plan, but the whole tour meeting and talking about a diversity, equity, inclusion strategy and really getting into it and challenging us and talking through it, it was just so encouraging because he genuinely cared as part of his onboarding, his organization. This was a big part of his agenda. So I think like those little signs of commitment. I also think, for leaders out there that, do you bump the DE&I meeting off your calendar if you get too busy, too stressed, if something big comes up? That doesn't happen from the leaders in our organization. And I think it's a true sign of commitment to us. And even preparing for this presentation, some of the leaders in our organization were like, we would love to talk to you, make sure you feel prepped, make sure you feel like you know everything that we're doing, because they're proud of it, because they truly believe in it. So I think just, those little signs really matter to the entire organization. And then I want to touch on the incentives, because I think this is really important. And without the help of our legal teams, we can't do this appropriately in our corporate, structures. So last year we introduced a compensation component to DEI goals in our sales function. So this is for branch managers in our sales side. 2/3 of the discretionary bonus was tied to the DEI goal achievements. So at the end of the year, and they're being communicated their bonuses any day now, some individuals were rewarded and received higher compensation, and some were going to receive less compensation to the achievement of their DEI goals. So that was a big, bold move on our end and a change this last year that we took. And now we're working with our teams to incorporate that at leadership levels within our corporate structure. So I think, comp drives behavior at the end of the day. And I think companies taking that step and working with their legal teams is so important to see how we could align all of that, because that's how we take business initiatives, right? If you don't hit your business goals, you don't get paid. So I just think the more that companies can think about that and do that, we're going to see things move.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Angela. And what I'll do is, I know I said I would save Q&A for the end, but I see a very important question. I think we should kind of take a second. And it's kind of fitting right in the space where we are. I mean, it's really some of these organizations, there's always a look in DE&I, and a lot of organizations or a lot of individuals, when they say DE&I, it's really just kind of solely focused on, your race, your ethnicity, your kind of genetic makeup. One factor that really should get some attention is actually the level of a disability. Like, disability is a diverse trait, and we got to make sure that we are being inclusive. So can anybody on the panel kind of discuss like what their organization is doing for inclusivity as it relates to disabled individuals? And we'll even kind of throw it further kind of into, your protected class of your veteran status, LGBTQ, or even I'm drawing a blank, and I shouldn't at this point, being the diversity and inclusion director in so many levels, but
we won't hold it against you, Daryl.
I'm religious. That was my other one. That was my other one. I'm sorry. Religious, just kind of disability, veteran status, LGBTQ. What are your organizations doing in that space?
If I could jump in here. I mean, I mentioned earlier, Tyson has these BRG groups, right? And that's where you see those. We have a veteran BRG group. We have a Pride BRG group, disability group. So we have a lot of those different affinity groups. But I think, and this may partially be my fault, right? Because you look at me, you see one of my characteristics. But a lot of those other groups you've talked about, I can probably tick off 2 to 3 of those others. So I think sometimes certain characteristics get highlighted in conversation, but I think as a company and as individuals ourselves in the spaces we occupy, we just have to make a conscious effort to remember that our experience may be different from others' experience, but we all have experiences in this space, and we just have to respect and listen to those different experiences.
And I'll add on to that too. I tick a couple more boxes myself, and and again, I was telling the panel, like, I've been around a little bit, and and only like not that long ago when disability was recognized, right? I mean, there are actual laws in place for accommodation and that were put in place to protect people with disabilities. And so for the longest time, that was not something people disclosed. And even to this day, it's not always something people disclose, right? And so, we have to rely on the fact that people are willing to self-identify and, and ask for the help if they need it, right? Because otherwise, how would you know? So again, more on that. I know the ABA collects data on it, and again, we're trying to work towards that too, right? So we want to be inclusive of everyone.
And the one thing I'll add from the disability lens perspective, so, we constantly keep asking for a seat at the table. So we're building a new office, and we're part of the team and the committee talking about how that office should look and pointing out things. You can't expect people to know everything, but if you have someone like us at the table and we're like, well, what about that high top? What about the acoustics in that room? Does that technology have closed captioning? It just starts building the muscle in other people. And I think, they see such value in that and just the need for it. And to Joy's point on self-ID, people have different abilities, and coming into the office space and feeling like everyone could come in, have the same experience, I think is just powerful to the leaders, that they see there's a huge business opportunity in it. So I think, and then the other part is just the more we could do from a public advocacy standpoint. So if there's initiatives like Disability In has a CEO letter, our CEO joined it 2 years ago, things like that, where we're showing our public support, I think is really important. And then learning from each other and what we can do in our companies.
Yeah, and we do have also ERG groups that have they're very specific, and actually I love being a member of all of them. They just, you learn so much, and I think and all are welcome too, right? And so I think that's a really good way that we do put, the company puts so much enterprise-wise puts so much resources. So again, it's not just the programs that we're doing, specific to legal, but there are also a lot of opportunities for anyone. I saw the question from the young lawyer, and I guess I was curious, what struck me about is, what advice would you give to a young lawyer trying to be struggling with always feeling like they're going to be labeled as a diversity person? Well, just so you know, as my fellow panelists said, we owned it. That's why we're here. We're like, okay, good. You know what? I want to be that diversity person, right? Because I want to be able to do something about it now. And I appreciate that, now that we have the opportunity to be active instead of just not doing anything about it. And it's because of that for, each, everybody on this panel, that we're able to, make things happen, because we're talking about it. We're making sure that people know about it. And hopefully we are here to encourage you that if there's nothing wrong with being that person, actually. And we also want to be able to create an environment where it's okay, right? And sometimes if you don't know something or you're afraid to ask, I find that more in the Midwest. Like in the South, like they openly just say stuff, and half the time they don't mean it, not to excuse them, but they're willing to be educated. I find it here, people are afraid to say anything because they don't want to be labeled as the person, when really, honestly, and they said they know what to say, but honestly deep down they're the worst. So
yeah, and I'll just add, and I just want to thank you, Katie and Ashley, both for your questions, but on the whether disability is included in our DEI goals, as an employment attorney, I would be very concerned if there is an organization that isn't in 2022. It is a protected class. And I know it's an area that people are kind of just now removing certain taboos from. So they're speaking out about it. I have a colleague at JP Chase who is now in the Office of Disability and Inclusion as an attorney, not I'm just an employee working in ODI. I am looking at it from a legal lens. And then Ashley, I think you should look at it not as a struggle, but more as agency. You're owning it, use it to your advantage, and let people get behind you. It's a way to find your voice, and people will respect you for it in this day and age. Like if you can speak to that, it's a hot topic, and hopefully it stays that way. It's not just a season, but it's really a movement. So I would own it. Granted, there's some caveats. You don't want to stretch yourself too thin, because your work comes first too. That's why they're paying you. But own it. Don't look at it as a struggle. More so look at it as, this is my agency. This is what I am about, and people should know that. So from your LinkedIn, from what you engage about, you don't need to hide it. It's not a struggle. If they label you like that, some of that's their problem, and you just own that power.
If I could add, I mean, I would agree with what both of you guys said. I also do want to acknowledge sometimes it is hard to own it. It takes years. I was not that young attorney that owned it. I was that young attorney that tried to make sure I fit in as much as I could. It takes time. But I think the important thing is to know that it's okay. You have this space. And I think companies are starting to really communicate that better, and also to find that mentor. It may take some time, and that's all right. I think just stay true to your path and keep going the direction you think this should go.
I do agree with what everybody has said, so I will keep on my moderator's hat and move us forward to our last topic is really discussing why DE&I plans are important. I think that question was kind of the perfect segue into getting to that point. So in terms of why, on the how and why of implementing the DE&I plan, can you all, or actually for Sainabu and Angela, can you all kind of describe what has been the biggest challenge that you've seen across, law firms, corporations, or any other legal entity in retaining that diverse talent?
Well, speaking from my current position here at Tyson, I think for us, the biggest challenge has been location, where we are located. We are located in Arkansas, and it's hard to recruit from outside of the state. It's hard to convince people that Arkansas is where they should come live. And I'm not from Arkansas, and I can give my reasons why people should come live here, but I think that's a personal thing, right? And so sometimes that's the biggest barrier we have found in terms of recruiting and retention of diverse candidates.
Yeah, I think for us right now, it's not unique to us, but the job market right now is crazy, and there's great opportunities out there, and there's a lot of open roles at companies. And just, what we're trying to do is just ground ourselves in the research and what, we think people are saying that they want. They want career opportunities and development opportunities. They want good relationships with their managers. They want health and wellness balance, and then compensation. And it's not that compensation's less, but it's the whole package. So we're trying to take that approach when we're thinking about retaining diverse talent, and not just thinking about throw more money or, try to counter that offer, but what else was happening during their experience here, and how can we make them feel fulfilled across those kind of pillars. But it's really the job market right now for us.
No, I can appreciate that. And Angela, kind of to one of your points that you mentioned earlier was really looking at the kind of diversifying the hiring committees and having that different voice on the hiring committee. I think that also plays a role in your retention of your attorneys. If you look at, there have been studies that have kind of been formulated in the, I guess, kind of space of diversifying the hiring committees, because when these diverse candidates, when they actually appear for the interview or whatever, they see someone that looks like them or someone that can resonate or have some like or similarities, there's also a push that allows them to say, okay, well, there's someone there that looks like me or that shares some of the same diverse kind of characteristics that I may have, that will allow me to feel like I have the possibility or to have a voice at this particular organization. So that's one of the bigger pieces that kind of gets into the diversified hiring committee, is also having that mentor that sat on that committee, or having a sponsor inside of your organization that can kind of help promote you and kind of promote your platform in order to, if you have that in a space, it makes you feel comfortable in a space, and that's kind of how you're able to retain those lawyers as well. And now putting my moderator hat back on. So I'll flip over to Christina and Joy, and the question really for you all is, with whatever challenges that your organization may have, how does your DE&I plan or kind of target those challenges, and what is your organization doing to overcome those obstacles?
Awesome. So I first want to give a shout out. I think there are at least 40 young lawyers in the audience. And so shout out to all of you. So as you continue to attend these events, your network is really important to you. And so I say that because I'm very specific. So I will go to the website when people are pitching for a case. So I do litigation, I do employment. So we're always having firms say, oh, we can represent you. Can we give you this nice glossy, 10-pager and show you why you should pick our firm? So sometimes I will go to the firm website And maybe if the relationship partner already exists and they are non-diverse, I will say, who can you staff on this matter that is diverse? Or I will take it a step further and I will say, I want Katie on this matter. I want Ashley on this matter. And that makes so much of an impact in the firm because I hear about it later, like when we do the offhand call and they're like, thank you so much. You don't know how much of an impact that made for me in my firm, because now my firm wants to make sure that I'm happy. They want to make sure that I stay because they know that the client, all of us on this Zoom here, they want me. They're specifically asking for me. So that is very powerful, but it doesn't just happen overnight. To like Sainabu's point, you have to continue to stay active, reach out to people, foster meaningful, genuine relationships with people so that when I know people, I'm in part of a different organizations, I see them, I'm like, oh, you're at a firm that does work for us. I want to make sure you get on this case. The other thing we do, and I'm mindful of our time, is that we want to make sure that people know our targets. So people have started to put that in their pitch that, oh, this person is a diverse partner. So don't just give me the same thing that we've been seeing for years and years and decades. I want to see diversity. Why this team? And I'm going to check the bills to make sure that those people are doing the work on the matter. You didn't just put them in as a bait and switch to get the work, and then you give it to the other people that have been getting all the work all the time. So those are two ways, and then I'll flip it to Joy. I see you're off mute.
Well, like you said, talking about the plan. I mean, yes, you have to have a framework to work with them, but no, it evolves, right? Like I said, what's really great about us, we, everybody on our legal team knows that we have a plan, we have the strategy, and they get to have input into it, right? Which is really great. And again, not everything works, but you have to be flexible. You have to be, realize, okay, this is not also going to happen overnight, right? I mean, but that said, that doesn't mean that we can't, move forward either, right? It's not like, oh, let's just sit around and wait to see what happens. No, it's like we're able, again, each one of us are empowered to do something about it. What I find remarkable, I think one of you said earlier, is one of our best recruiting tools. The way, again, these companies before, the reason that their teams are not as diverse is because most companies have like referral systems, right? And so they refer things to their friends or people they know, or people, they're going to, they hung out with, or again, and so really, again, it's people who didn't necessarily have a diverse network, right? And so as we are growing our team internally, that is like the biggest, what do I say? It's not quite advertisement, but it's like comfort, right? When I first joined, there were 0 Black African-American attorneys, male attorneys. Now within the 20 months I've been here, there's 7. So, and again, initially I think there was oh, I didn't want to go there, but then I see, Jason's here and Brandon's here and Justin's here. And, again, it just, you feel like, oh, I actually could belong, right? And, one of our newest hires even said, there are more Black and African-American male attorneys here than there were in any big law firm I'd ever joined. So, I think that, on that, it's pretty great. So, I always said, again, when it just burned my heart when you see a CEO from a big major company be so defensive when asked, why isn't your talent pool more diverse, and he says something, and you know who I'm talking about, when he says like, oh, well, we don't know where to find them. I'm like, no, that's crap. You just don't know where to look, or you're not looking and you don't know where to look, right? And so that's another big effort that we're trying to make, again, empower, whether it's our internal team or external team, really to spread the word. And And again, I love these panels because I love talking about the great work we are. I mean, I'm part of it because, you know, I really feel like I'm making a difference. And so, and I love speaking to all of you. And like I said earlier, when we're in our practice run, meeting all of you, because I mean, we all learn from each other, right? I mean, again, just I took some notes on some of the stuff that you guys said too. Just, you know, there's just so much to do together. And I think having more panels, having more conversations, having opportunity again to, you know, meet our peers, where finally, this is no longer a hobby, right? We're no longer, I mean, this is my full-time job. And I applaud companies that, you know, that are willing to invest in, you know, professionals like us. So I think that's really what makes the difference.
No, Joe, I do appreciate that. And I do see we have about 4 minutes left. Let me check. All right, no questions in the Q&A. So I will really go to kind of our last question, and it's really right before the wrap up. And I'll give everybody an opportunity. I would say, you know, in 15 seconds or less, is really what benefits have you seen from your DE&I plan? And that even goes to, you know, outside counsel. And one for me that I will say, here recently that I saw was that in kind of retaining outside counsel on a matter, I looked and took an opportunity on a diverse associate. And actually after that diverse associate landed the work, that associate was actually just recently promoted to partner. So it's having seen that and actually taking that opportunity on an associate and seeing that associate be promoted to partner because of that work. That's been very meaningful. I think that's one of the highlights and one of the reasons why I decided to make the transition to in-house. And so I'll kind of go around the room and start with Christina. One positive benefit that you've seen from a DE&I plan.
I would say what isn't a benefit? It's such a hard question. There's so many options, but I love your example. I would say just seeing people happier in their careers. It's hard to find lawyers that are happy and just, you know, finding meaningful work. When the pandemic hit, so many associates reached out and they were like, I'm getting my hours cut, like I'm not getting work. And so I was just like, got you. Let's see, what can we do? Like, how can you turn this marketing work that you're doing into something that is going to result in better credit for you? Or how can I tap you on the shoulder for the next case so that when the next case comes in the state that you're in, oh, I'd like to work with Melissa. So those are a few, but there's so many, so it's hard to pick just one, but I'm curious to hear what my co-panelists also have to say.
All right, Sainabu.
I mean, I would echo both of their statements. So just to kind of sum it up, I was talking to one of my mentors here at Tyson, and I think it's really something that resonates with me. He said that his former boss told him, you know, if you can see it, you can be it, right? And so to Christina's point, there is no downside, right? Everything's a benefit, because when you see the work you're doing and when you see the changes, you see yourself in someone else's shoes 10, 15 years down the line, then you know, okay, I can be there one day as well. So to me, that's a great benefit.
I appreciate that. Joy, we'll drop you. We got about a minute left. So Joy, I will get you and then Angela, and then I will wrap us up.
Well, like I said, there's this everything that we do every day is a win, right? You know, just the fact that we are here talking about it, hopefully we're encouraging young attorneys. I saw a real quick question that said, what about mid-sized firms who, you know, can't necessarily invest in that? I think that's a cop-out. They can. So I'm just gonna leave it at that.
I agree with Joy, it's cop out. And the thing, I'll say I'm a big indicators person. So when you're talking about the health of the economy, there's multiple indicators that you look at, and some of them are obscure indicators. I'm a big believer in looking at all of that when you're thinking about diversity and inclusion. So not just looking at hiring, not just looking at attrition, but looking at sentiment, looking at people joining calls, people voicing their opinion during meetings, like all of those matter. And then you see that you're making progress, and even as incremental progress every day, just trying to push the needle.
Mm-hmm.
No, I appreciate that. And also to kind of add to that, I think, even as mid-sized firms, there's more work that can be done in this space. So if you are maybe in a geographical area where there are not a lot of diverse attorneys, lend your resources that you may have to philanthropic efforts that are around in the community that will promote or diversity. So I think those are ways, that may be a sponsorship to a NAMWOLF organization or a National Bar Association or something of that nature. Lend your resources, and then you may potentially get someone that sees what you're doing and may desire to want to join your organization because they've seen the great work that you've done. We are sustainable. I saw you come off mute. You may have something. We're at the top of the hour, but I'll let you jump in here and then I'll wrap us up.
Well, one, feel free to reach out offline. I worked at a mid-sized firm that didn't have those dedicated resources until last year in response to all that has happened. There are a variety of ways that you can make sure you get the resources for what you need. So happy to talk offline if needed on that front.
I appreciate it. We've provided the materials. Hopefully you can go and find everybody on LinkedIn. That's the best way to connect. I think everybody's listed by their name. Please do that. I want to thank everybody for being here today and joining us in this meaningful conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion in corporations. Please look to our next 2 events of the 4-part series. Also, we look to have everybody, if you are not, this kind of kicks off the ABA Mid-Year Conference. So hope to see many of you around at the ABA Mid-Year Conference. Thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists. I could not have done this without you all. Y'all were great. And everybody, just thank you for being here. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.